Welcome to the Twist News. I'm Erika Grey.
And I'm Don Pravda. And welcome from Palm Beach, Florida, at the world-famous Breakers Hotel.
Yes, Don, it figures that you would have brought me here. This is a Don place.
Well, this has class, Erika. That's why we're here.
Yes, we're at the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach. And we're going to talk about a few headlines today.
That's right, and I'm going to prove it. This is the Palm Beach Post, the official newspaper of this town. This small town, actually, though elegant and beautiful, of Palm Beach, Florida. So it is summer in Florida, and it is sizzling hot. Here's the headline. Is 78 really the magic number to help you save on AC bills? I'm going to tell you, if that's the best you can do, you're going to be very hot. It's going to be like a Seinfeld show. 78 will not do it for your air conditioning. So I say no.
Isn't it something how when we came down here, we bypassed the end of the world weather that was taking place, these storms. Do you want to talk about those storms, Don? You need more details.
A few days of, well, sun, and then the rain hit as typical in South Florida, which cooled off.
But you had people telling you that storms were taking place that with details of the storms that had never happened before. So explain some of that.
A few people told me, including one woman, she thought it was raining so hard that although she lives in an elegant home, a beautiful home in the generally Boca Raton, she was wondering if the roof would collapse. It sounded to her, and this was going on for half a day, like a hailstorm was hitting the house. Or she was on the edge of a tornado, pounding rain, just unbelievable tropical storm and bad weather, although not untypical of South Florida in the summer.
And when we got here, it really was not bad. It's typical hot, but it wasn't bad. But how about the end of the world weather we just escaped in New York City with a pestilence of gnats and more of the Canadian wildfire smoke coming in? We missed that one too.
Delayed our flight. So it's an era of insects invading and terrible weather, and the skies were black with the wildfires from Canada, which continue. I understand as many as 50 Canadian fires going on in that nation, affecting, it's about half of America now is receiving this smoke.
But in other news, there were developments within the Supreme Court, and I'll let Don take it away.
Now let's read the headline here. It is the Palm Beach Post. I'm going to prove it once again. Justices reject student loan plan. So right now, there's a lot of very, very unhappy former students. They could be in their 20s, they could be in their 30s, 40s, maybe even their 50s. My student loan is paid off, and I'm in the 60s. But here's the deal. There was hope that there would be loan forgiveness, and all those in particular who went to private schools with the heavy bills that were not paid off. Well, bad news for the medical students and the law students, the graduate students.
But excuse me, Don, how could they have granted that anyway? Because the deficit is so skyrocket high. I think they're beginning to realize that they've got to rein this in and can't keep giving all these giveaways.
But of course, that is the question, Erika. Should everything be free? Do you have to pay at the register for your bill and for your life story?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The European markets right now are rocking because they have just decided and enacted on what's called an access point of information for European companies, and it's the really beginning stages of their capital markets union, where they're going to take the 27 member nations markets and combine them so that you don't have you'll still have the different indices that are throughout the countries, but you're going to essentially have a mirror of the S&P 500, and you're going to have that on a European scale. So while our deficit is being racked up and the BRIC nations are moving away from our dollar, we're seeing now moves in the euro or in the eurozone that are very positive for the euro. And I think, Don, that in giving away all this money, we just can't do it anymore. Our dollar is in trouble.
Dollar's in trouble. That's understating it. What is the future, Erika? What's going on? Look at the inflation that we have.
Oh, the inflation is crazy. In part, we're paying for the war and for the crazy foreign policy on the part of the United States that just keeps fighting wars and proxy wars.
Well, in the time that we have been here in Florida, here's the concerns. We've been around a lot of senior citizens, not a few, a lot. How are they going to live on their former funds and their savings and their pension plans, if they have one, and their Social Security? So there's a lot of concern about the grocery bills in Florida. When I see the prices at the restaurants, they are not low, they're quite high. So there's worry down here about the future of living for the rest of your life.
And talk about restaurants, Don. We were in Paris and Rome, Brussels. It didn't matter what European city we were in, Cologne, Zurich. All of the restaurants are packed. But yet in Manhattan, I was shocked in Little Italy and on Restaurant Row over the last several months when we've been in the restaurants, how there's just not the tables being filled.
That's true.
And the few number of tables. I think the United States is in a lot of trouble.
We're seeing a lot less foot traffic in Manhattan. However, we are seeing a spurt of growth from tourism, still mainly domestic, but we have seen foreign tourists again in Manhattan. So that's the good news for New York.
And we're talking about New York as we're in Palm Beach.
We're in Palm Beach, Florida, right? Once you're a New Yorker, it's said you're always a New Yorker. And I'm not from Indiana, by the way. I am from New York, and it is a very beautiful place to be here in Palm Beach County.
Yes, absolutely. And what about switching gears again, talking about the defense industry, the U.S. fighting proxy wars? What about this Ammunition Act on the part of the European Union with the acronym ASAP and producing the equivalent of a couple of $1 billion in ammo between the member states and the Commission, providing the funding, or $1 billion to $2 billion, somewhere within there, providing the funding and the building up of the EU's defense industry to provide Ukraine with what it feels Ukraine needs, because Ukraine seems to be this very strategic interest on the part of the European Union as well as the United States. But what do you think of the buildup now of the military in Europe?
It's, by any standard, this is going to be a long war. There seems to be no cessation to it. And the talk about billions in artillery shells, this is starting to feel like World War II in Europe over a land war.
Well, it's a very major. You're talking that the Ukraine has the largest landmass, 40 million citizens. So the EU easily will bump up its population to, well, the UK exiting brought the EU population down to about 473 million. It was 512 million, which is 500 million people. But with Ukraine, it would have bumped it up to like 5.5 million, 550 million people. That's a considerable number of consumers. And then you have the Ukraine that is agriculturally rich. And you know what, Don? Let's talk about the white privilege that Ukrainian refugees get. We were in Rome, and what did we see that was just horrific? But at the Roman airport, at the Roman train station, you have right outside the train station the migrants and the refugees from the North African countries, yes, who are obviously of African descent, laying on the ground, laying on blankets on cement. Yes. But the Ukrainians are given status. The Ukrainian white refugees are given status as citizens of the EU, allowed to instantly migrate in, given all these benefits. That's a real injustice, Don, and I know it's been spoken about on the internet. The Indian stations spoke out against it a long time ago, but that, I think it really was driven home when we were in Rome and we saw the Africans who are sleeping on the ground. Yes. And knowing that the Ukrainians are being given this red carpet treatment. It's not fair, but the reason they're being given the red carpet treatment is because of their 40 million citizens, agriculturally rich land. But Africa is also a very rich land.
Well, and the other nations are welcoming a higher population.
Yes, but Africa has the African Union, and it's not looking to join the European Union. And because of the colonial policy of the several European nations with Africa and slavery and everything else, the Africans, there's not a real lot of warm and fuzzy feelings that they have with the European Union, although the European Union is looking to really build a relationship with the African Union. So, but essentially the African Union doesn't present a population that's coming into Europe and providing some benefits, such as the Ukrainians, because the Ukraine has already applied to be a member of the European Union. So this country may eventually be a member and its population becomes part of the European Union. So they're getting red carpet treatment.
Sure seems that way.
And your two cents, well, Don, you saw the Africans outside of the Rome train station. You saw the African migrants and refugees.
Absolutely, not a few that seem to have nowhere to live. Very sad, very disturbing. On side streets, very subtly, definitely in the airport area, for sure.
Yes,
a lot
if
of
you
people,
add up everywhere that we went, yes, I see.
Even under a tent. Disturbing story, by the way, out of Russia. This Wagner group, where are they going to be training troops? Belarusia. They're going to be advisors and trainers for the nation of Belarusia, which is worried about their future. It's a mighty, mighty difficult time in that region of the world.
Belarusia.
Where's
that?
That is...
Isn't that Belarus? Belarus? Are you talking about Belarus?
Belarus, but known as Belarusia as well.
See, you're so smart, Don Pravda.
But I had students in my class in high school from that region, by the way. And in the past, a lot of immigrants came from the Jewish community from that region. But let's add something to it. It is an independent nation, formerly part of the USSR, the Soviet Union, and who's going to be training them? The Wagner Group. Isn't that wonderful.
And the Wagner Group has really made some serious waves. And it looks like that got resolved fairly quickly. And then the question is, was Vladimir Putin almost assassinated? And that's clickbait. In my opinion, that's just clickbait. Everything was fine. Everything was resolved. And everybody loves to think that Vladimir Putin almost got assassinated, but that wasn't the case.
I sure hope the Wagner Group doesn't come into the Army Reserve in the United States and start training them. Right. Maybe that's what's next. I sure hope not. And God bless the Army Reserve. They're on standby and they're ready.
Talk about the Army Reserve. Let's talk about all the police now that are in Manhattan. Why don't you tell a little bit about that? That's like an army, Don.
We are grateful for the protection of the police force, but I am telling you as a native New Yorker, it's becoming like a fortress. Although there's gratitude towards the police, and crime is being reduced, by the way, for those who are outside the Big Apple. It is happening. There is a reduction in crime. I feel a certain sadness, though, from this, that we need this epic police force in order to live normally. That is not the New York that I remember from the past. And let's just say I feel a little brokenhearted by it. But I admire the police force. They're very well trained. They value their jobs. They have a very difficult job to render. And we're grateful, but it is alarming to see this all over New York, not only Manhattan.
Well, if the U.S. government didn't give so much money to fight all of these wars, it could have provided federal funding for the mentally ill who now are literally kicked out onto the streets in probably every nation or every state in the United States. And that's the issue, is the mentally ill have no place to go. They're roaming the streets. They're causing all kinds of crime. And that's because U.S. dollars are fighting so many wars that have just literally made no sense, destroyed our country, caused more problems, including all of the money that we're throwing at Ukraine. And in addition, you've got the homeless issue. What about the homeless issue in California? That is so shocking. The homeless in New York, again, all of this money. So now New York has to pay for all of this police.
Mayor Adams has gone to Washington, knocking on the door on Pennsylvania Avenue. He needs federal funding for all the new immigrants that are coming into New York. It's not like New York has the funds. New York is in deficit spending like never before. Now the mayor is crying out to the government, we need your help. We need billions of dollars. I wonder, where are these billions of dollars coming from?
I don't know, because a lot of your New Yorkers have fled into Connecticut, and of course from Connecticut, and it's helped our state. And our state is changing because Fairfield County, which has the close proximity to New York City, is changing because of the influx of New Yorkers. And that's where they're coming. Many of them are coming into Connecticut as well as into other states in the Union. And we're down here in Florida to see how busy Florida is. A lot have exited to Florida. So they're exiting, Don. They're fleeing.
And there's just a certain kind of discomfort, concern, worry. What is the future? People don't feel secure right now. And here in South Florida, how are people going to live if they go into their high senior years? That's a big story here. And they're worried about their electric bills and the high prices of food and those so-called early bird specials. Well, there may not be too many specials much longer.
And too many specials.
Yeah.
Or restaurants. The restaurants are going to start dying away because it's become so expensive that a lot of families, older couples, will not be able to afford it.
Correct. So it's a world of worry now, and Florida has this enormous population, by the way. It's not a small place. It's not quite California, but people are fleeing here for a future. And now those who thought Florida has cheaper housing and cheaper prices, not so. Things are very high.
Yeah, it's
in the
very
stores.
scary, Don, to
Yeah.
see where things are going to go, from the crazy weather to the U.S. deficit.
Correct.
It's very, very frightening now to see what's going to end up happening. So I guess we've covered everything now,
Right.
Don.
And primary season is nearing, and maybe by the time we have another broadcast, maybe it won't be 12 candidates or 13 or 22. Maybe it will be 30 in the primary. Who else is coming aboard?
It will be interesting.
Maybe we'll run for a president.
But I don't think that whoever gets the presidency, I don't think it's going to make a difference.
Well,
And I think the U.S. is declining rapidly. Europe is rising. And we're going to have a very new pecking order within 5 years' time.
whoever becomes the president, God bless him or her, and may God save this country. And you know something? Let's root for Florida. Let's say something good. People are here. They're trying to lead decent lives in their senior years. Their grandchildren, their children are visiting or moving to Florida. So this is a very special place.
Don, I have a different view.
Okay.
I have a different view. So I'm going to
All right.
contrast
That's all right.
Don here. I have never seen so many impatient people in my life.
Okay.
We were we went to a McDonald's to have coffee and tea, and there was literally almost a knockout dragout between two ladies. I thought for sure one of them might be coming in with a firearm, and I think Florida takes it for the most impatient people, beeping at literally the drop of a hat. So Don, I can't say I agree with
All
you.
right. But I've gone to I have a different background, that I did work for the U.S. Senator of Florida. I have been all over this state. There's a lot of just very sleepy, quiet towns. There's just people who are trying to live out their lives simply, decently, and they just need a nice place to live, and they just want to be good citizens. That is also the Florida I know, and I'm quite aware it's a Florida that has a lot of guns here, and people don't think the same way.
Yeah, it looks like they won't even need a permit now to
Okay.
carry. And they're probably going to need it here because there's a lot of anger in this state. And probably
And,
need it. Who knows what could happen here. Anyway, sorry for my
Okay.
little negative view. But anyway, that's it for today's broadcast. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and check out our Amazon store.
Thank you, and shalom, shalom, shalom.
Till next time.